All right, so let's talk about data centers. These centers have become a hot topic within the last few weeks. What is Atlanta doing to balance the need for these data centers with concerns that they may be taking up space that could be better used for, people or businesses?
So let's understand first why we're getting a lot of data center demand in Atlanta. We have a lot of transactions. Almost 75, 80% of all transactions on any credit card in the United States gets processed in Atlanta. So there's a lot of demand because we have what's called processing alley. Also, the Beltline has high fiber cable that was laid as the trail is being built. So we have a network of high fiber. So that's what's driving demand. The City Council a few weeks ago basically undertook a new piece of legislation that basically banned data centers within a certain proximity of the Beltline, because that does not seem like the right land use close to the Beltline, where you can have housing or green space or transportation, as we talked about before. And I think more broadly, there are questions about the safety and the overall good neighborliness of these kinds of data centers. Most of them are needed to be built at scale. Most of them are being built outside the city of Atlanta. But we took that first step around the Beltline, and I think we're going to continue to look at the zoning around them to see whether or not it really makes sense for them to be in the city. But the reason there's demand is because there's a lot of processing happening right up in Midtown.
Yes, so speaking of that, it seems like there's a push to make downtown, become a bit more vibrant than it is right now. And I know that there are several data centers in downtown. So how do you all make sure that they don't essentially overtake areas that you all think will be prime for more people and more businesses?
Yeah, so there are some data centers. Once those data centers are established, you can't really take them back, but you can make sure that any new data centers that are going to be built that are outside that Beltline area also are conforming to what is the interaction on the street, right? Because that's really what part of the problem is if you build a data center and basically it just is a flat front, it's almost like a parking garage. There's no pedestrian interaction. There's no retail. So you actually can zone to say, hey, the ground floor, just like you do with other commercial buildings, has to be a certain sort of interaction with the street. And then also master planning. I mean, we've seen very successfully in neighborhoods around Atlanta to have a master plan. And so downtown is going through a massive renaissance, as we know, with huge investments in South Downtown, Centennial Yards, conversions like Courtney talked about, and other investments. So I think it is time to envision what we want from downtown. Do we want it to be pedestrian focused? How do we think about the different zones of downtown? That sort of master plan can also be used to drive development.
Okay, let's talk Beltline Rail. That was brought up earlier. That plan has, met some opposition from some neighborhoods on the, I guess, more on the east side of the city. Do you support rail on the Beltline, and what can the city do to ensure that the trail network remains accessible to all Atlantans?
So I don't think that let's put it this way. We will fail our future if we do not have mass transit on the Beltline hard stop, period. Because all the affordability goals that we just talked about, all the accessibility goals that you just mentioned, and any climate goals that you talk about cannot happen without new transit across the city. And so it has to be mass transit. I haven't seen anything that moves mass people on a scale like that except rail. So I think it has to be rail, unless somebody can show me something different. I also believe that the Beltline is the biggest economic engine that we can put our finger on right now. And if it is not transit accessible, then it is exclusive to people who have money, and that is wrong. And it is also not the original vision of the Beltline, which was supposed to link neighborhoods together and supposed to actually create jobs and networks. So how do you make it accessible? You put transit on it. You make sure that zoning continues to be in a way that you have a mix of types of housing and a mix of types of commercial. And we make sure that we invest across the entire city when it comes to green space and when it comes to commercial development and when it comes to affordability. It should not just be in one part of the city. But I think that all of those goals will fail, and it simply will be waterfront property without waterfront if we don't have transit on it. Mm-hmm. And I live within 300 feet of it, or 300 yards of it, and I've been there before the Beltline was actually built. So I've seen the whole thing, and I've been a part of the whole thing. And to me, so it's also in my backyard.
So what do you say to people who I guess bought their homes understanding that the Beltline was going to be there, but they didn't understand the fact that rail was going to actually was part of the original plan, and now that they're upset that they may have this potential transit coming through their neighborhood?
Yeah, I've walked the Beltline with some of the critics, and I have said that I'm sorry that they had a bad real estate agent. Because as soon as the trail was envisioned, transit was envisioned on it, period. I bought over there in 2010, and it was very clear before even a shovel had been put in the ground on the East Side Trail that transit was going to be a part of it. So I'm sorry, but that is part of it. The other is, look, this is a communal space. It is not a park. It is a transit network. It is a place where people move every day. I was out there today. Clyde can attest. I'm out there almost every day. I was out there today. There's hundreds of people moving up and down, doing things, playing music, whatever the case may be. This is not an exclusive spot. It's a public spot. And so we've got to make it open to anybody in the city who wants to be a part of it.
There's been some controversy, or some questions, I should say, from city council members concerning the Policing Alternatives and Diversion Program. If y'all don't know, that's a program. It's called PAD, that helps people who do like minor offenses, where they can sort of get the help they need instead of going to jail. Can you share some of those concerns, and is there an appetite to either do away with or improve the model?
So the model basically is, if you call 311, then a team of specialists who are not police officers, they're not armed, will go and will engage somebody and try to get them into services. And so it is an alternative to either going to jail or going to Grady Hospital. Those are the only two destinations right now if a police officer or PAD picks somebody up. We are going to open a new diversionary center in the old city jail, in the detention center, this fall. And so that will be a third place that someone can be taken who needs services. The hard part about PAD is people look at how much and have raised questions about, well, how much are we paying per diversion? If you're going to actually have somebody come off of the street into services, sometimes you have to visit them 2 times, 4 times, 6 times, 8 times, develop a relationship and trust. And so PAD actually has a lot of visits that don't turn into a diversion today, but may turn into a diversion down the road. So I think one is there's been questions about costs, but the question is, would you rather have police officers doing those calls, or would you rather have nobody doing those calls? And then the other is, I think we have to think about, do we have enough housing to actually put people into our housing long term? And that's exactly what Terry and Courtney were talking about. We lack that transitional housing. So the more housing that they can bring online quickly, the better the whole PAD model is going to work. There's a third piece of the controversy. Most of the people in this room probably know, because they read Axios, that homelessness is not in the city charter. It is not the city's issue legally. It's the county's issue. But the county has consistently not put money into the issue. So some council members have said we should lower our funding or stop our funding to force the county to do their share. I don't think that that forcing mechanism necessarily will work. And I don't think that it would be right of us to neglect those who are in need over those sort of politics. Should the county do more? Absolutely. Should we pressure them to do more? Absolutely. Should we cut PAD to do it? I don't think so. So that's the nature of the conversation. And I think right now we're trying to think about what's the right model, what's the right funding, and then there are some of these questions that people have raised to be answered.
You mentioned the county, using the old ACDC as the center for PAD eventually. There's a caveat to that. The sheriff wants to build a new jail. So how are you all talking to the county when it comes to asking them to contribute more, but there's a push for, by certain people for the city to sell that building to the county to use that as a jail?
Well, currently there is a lease that some of the floors of ACDC are being used by the county, and then some have been retained for the diversionary center. That's the status quo right now. I know that Chairman Pitts has mentioned the desire to sell the jail, but I don't think that there's real appetite for that right now. I haven't heard that on council. I think everybody's very interested to see how this diversionary model, this new diversionary center, is going to work and whether or not it's worthy of being expanded.
Okay. We have about a minute left, so tell me one fun thing about you. You said you ran the Chicago Marathon over the weekend?
I ran the Chicago Marathon on Sunday, 26.2 miles through the city of Chicago. Okay. Thank you. That was quite fun. I run a lot, and I may even be out there on Sunday for the 10-miler, if anybody. It's the best race in Atlanta, 10 miles from Atlantic Station, all through the Midtown and Piedmont Park is great. So I do spend a lot of time running, and it is a great way to see the city.
Well, thank you so much. We unfortunately are out of time, and I really appreciate this conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.